So, the truth about generational curses coming right up. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Common Sense Logic Reason. And as always, I want to say thank y'all for joining me today. Now, generational curses is something that you often heard crying about with black victims. You know, they'll often say that black people are suffering in America from generational curses, and they'll say that, some say that this is evidence that blacks are God's chosen people, that the Bible supposedly says that his people are going to suffer through 400 years of oppression, even though the Bible doesn't say that. But mostly you hear the cries of this from black people, and they'll place the blame on, of course, racism. They'll say that, it's these curses that were black people suffering in America. These are generational curses from racism and white supremacy. Of course, if you pay attention to them, it just end up being more black inferiority. But here's the truth about generational curses. Now, they're not genetic. Okay, there's nothing in anyone's genes that say that they're cursed. Now, obviously, you have health issues, certain things like that, deformities in genes, but that has nothing to do with generational curses. In reality, generational curses is cultural. It's actually a cultural thing. This is learned behavior. When people see other people acting in a certain way, they'll emulate that behavior. Parents pass this behavior on to their children in that way. So if you live in a community and you see a bunch of people acting in a certain way in a community, you're going to emulate that. And then that's how the behavior is passed down. If it's bad behavior, they'll just say it's generational curses. But it's not really a curse. It's not a generational curse. It's just bad behavior that's being handed down. Perfect example of this would be the ghetto mentality. The ghetto mentality is a perfect example of learned behavior. This is behavior that black people learn living in hoods, housing projects. Again, and this was born out of the turbulent 60s, as I've said, when black females chose to follow the sexual liberation movement to be sexually liberated, and they started doing what they wanted to do. Sexually, they started laying up with the wrong dudes, and they started becoming single mothers. This is how the black community led to the downfall of black community. And that the ghetto behavior that I talk about all the time, the ghetto mentality was born out of that situation. And those women, because they were living off the government and they didn't have to be responsible for anything, they started to become children, and they started to teach their children to be children, and so on and so forth. So that behavior is handed down. It's not a curse, it's just handed down behavior. No different than this thought culture that we see happening. All these women want to be thoughts now. That's learned behavior from social media. Once again, a byproduct of the turbulent 60s. Once social media came, and those females who didn't have I would say the word I'm looking for, they didn't have any strict nothing on them saying that behavior, or no shame upon him, because once again, that shame was removed because of this sexual liberation movement. Well, these women with no shame on them, you give them the social media, and they start emulating the nonsense they see in social media, on TV. The housewives and the basketball wives, and most of that crap on social media is fake. Most of these women are put up on fake lives, but these women see this, they want to emulate it, and this is why the thought nonsense has taken off. It's all cultural, and it's all behavior that's handed down. Now, what I say is, instead of crying about the behavior, instead of crying about the generational curses, how about we identify this behavior and stop handing it down? Again, when you hear black people crying about nonsense from the past, stuff from the past that's irrelevant today, and saying that it's still relevant to today, the only reason why this stuff is relevant is because you keep brainwashing the latest generation and telling them that it's relevant. Black Wall Street It's not relevant to today. Okay, Oscarville, Georgia is not relevant to today. None of that stuff is relevant to today. The only thing that's relevant about this stuff is, as I said, is we keep brainwashing and indoctrinating the latest generation of blacks into being victims and telling them about it. So physically, it's not impacting them, it's just mentally. So how about we stop mentally sabotaging our children and turning them into victims, and there will be no black victimhood. Anyway, like I said, y'all, it's my 2 cents on this. Anybody who cries about generational curses and say that generational curses are impacting black people, to them I say, stop handing the bullshit down. And as always, y'all, until next time.